Hello and welcome to the shed. Got an interesting one for you today. I was on a stream last night I forgot his channel now, News Units channel. Christian on there, and he had a near-death experience. So he was telling us about the near-death experience, and I was explaining why I don't believe in near-death experience. Quite an interesting one. I don't know how long it'll be on for. You'll know because this will have gone out. So it might be about an hour. I'm not too sure. So I'll add him to add that to the stream, and I hope you find it interesting. So here we dig into near-death experience and why I don't believe the real. Of course it is. There's nothing special about that.
So that is. Well, I mean, I've had an encounter. Okay, I had a near-death experience, and okay, that might be subject to people's interpretation and think, well, there may be other causes why and all that.
One.
I understand.
So you had a near-death experience. So when you've got a near-death experience, you're not actually dead. You don't actually die. It's
no. So I'm not talking about it. When I say near-death, I'm not talking about my heart stopping. I'm talking about coming to a place where God brought healing into my life and did something that baffled the medical establishment at the time.
The medical establishment gets baffled all the time. It gets things wrong all the time.
Yeah, I know, but they were baffled with me. But they get things right as well.
But that's not surprising. Now, if that never happened, so if the medical profession never encountered something that goes, wow, bloody hell, we didn't think that this person was going to survive this, and they did. If that never happened, now I'd be surprised at that. I'm not surprised that things slip through the net. They don't see something quite as it is, or it gets overdosed, and somebody is diagnosed, and they possibly aren't going to survive it, or whatever it is. That doesn't surprise me in the slightest. That, to me, is not impressive at all. It really is not impressive.
Yeah, it happens, but here's the thing. It happens that sometimes people just get better. But what I'm saying is,
you don't. I'm sure you don't think that all these stories are true. Some of them might be, some of them might not be.
I'm talking about the ones that are true. The ones that I'm not talking about the made up.
How do you know which ones are true? How do you know which ones are made up? And how do you know that which ones is we don't have an answer for it, so we're just going to go, God did it. Why do you think? So you've got 8 billion people on the planet. I don't know what you went through. So why was God just sat there one day and just go, right? I'm going to. Jace is going through a bad time. I'm going to go down. I'm going to save Jace. Do you think God actually did that? Do you think he had the time to actually think, man, I'm going to go do something for this Jace guy?
Well, it's possible. Well, it's possible.
Yeah, but why would you believe it? Just because something's possible, why would you just automatically go,
well,
that's what I need to believe? You're choosing to believe that.
Okay, so I have to look at the facts. I have to look at everything that happened to me in that situation, and I have to attribute a cause to the eventual outcome of me being alive today. Okay, I need to look at all the factors, put everything in its proper place, and come to a conclusion of what caused me to get better the way I did. Okay, so I've got to look at it all.
I don't know what the circumstances were of what happened. So I mean,
yeah. Well, basically what happened. Well, basically what happened. I mean, there's a whole lot of factors at play. But basically, what happened is I jumped into a situation to save someone's life in China, and as a result, me and a couple of other teachers, we were attacked by Chinese with knives and bottles. And long story short, I was bottled and stabbed. I ended up in hospital with a subarachnoid brain hemorrhage. Okay? So that's a long story short. Was in the hospital, was getting worse, was told to get my affairs in order. Now, things do happen and people do get better. But the interesting thing that happened to me was the fact that one night I had an encounter where Christ came to me, okay? And I literally felt the power and the love and his healing. Now, people would go, oh, that could have been in your head. You had a brain injury. Well, yeah, I could have. But I have to look at the eventual outcome is that in 24 hours later, I was able to walk out of that hospital knowing that God had done something in my life and have the medical establishment wondering what the heck went on. Because as far as they were concerned, I was to get my affairs in order and I was not improving. So I had a miraculous improvement literally overnight. It wasn't a week later. It wasn't 2 weeks later. It was literally overnight. So those are the factors that I've had to, piece together.
Yeah, and obviously I can't verify. I've got no way. I've just got your word for that. I'm not saying you're lying. I believe that the story that you're telling is probably the way you interpreted it. But yeah, like you said, people do end up extremely ill at the brink of death, and they can be sorted out. Now, if you hadn't got to the hospital and had just been laid at the side of the road or in a ditch somewhere, do you think you would have survived it then? No, I don't think you would have done.
Well, I probably wouldn't. You know what? I do not know. God could have done the same thing then. Up in a ditch somewhere, he could have done the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, basically, you were getting medical intervention and against the odds. That happens all the time.
The crazy thing is, I was in China, in a third world country. The medical intervention that they were giving me was they couldn't really do anything. Other than monitor me.
China doesn't have a third world medical practice. Chinese are quite good at medical stuff.
Not where I was. I was not in a city. I was in a place called Guilin. I was unable to travel, and they were doing what they could for me, which was very little, other than keep me stable, painkillers, rest. There was very little that they could do for me, But that's what happened. So that's what happened. But God could have done that miracle in a ditch. He could have done that anywhere. And I could have, there could have been other reasons.
Or it might not be God, and you just was lucky and managed to recover from that.
So this all boils down to the attribution of causality, what you attribute the cause to be. Looking at different factors.
Well, if God didn't exist, we've got to accept that the story that you told, people have accidents, and every single day there's 8 billion people on the planet. People end up in horrific accidents on a daily basis. Hundreds of people a day in horrific accidents. Most of them don't survive it, but you've got to accept that just the probability of it, you're going to get the exceptions to the circumstances where people are going to survive, and you're just one of them.
Yeah, I am one of them.
So if God didn't exist, you would still accept the fact that some people would beat the odds and survive an horrific attack that you went through. You do accept that people, there are going to be the odd one or two that survive it. If God didn't exist, it would still happen.
Yeah, they could be the odd. The odd situation.
Why are you more prepared to say that what happened to you must have been a God, rather than being you accept that these things would happen without a God? There would still be a very, very small amount of people who survived against all the odds. So why are you not just willing to accept the fact that you may have just survived against the odds? Why are you going to attribute yours? Because you accept that happens, but what you're saying is you're going to put yours down to a God. How do you know that yours wouldn't have happened anyway, or how do you know that yours was a God? I don't know how you square that.
How I attribute it to a God is because, if I was there and things happen and people do miraculously survive, and the establishment think they don't know what happened. But in my situation, The fact is, I had that happens.
Oh, yes.
But in my situation, what makes it different for me is the fact that I had a genuine encounter the night before with God. I had a genuine encounter.
Couldn't that have just have been your brain hallucinating?
Well, if it was my brain that was hallucinating, yeah, it could have been. But the fact is, the outcome of that encounter afterwards is what sets it apart as being different. The outcome afterwards.
It's your personal experience, and so your personal
you know what
experience.
I'm saying?
No, because
so hold on. If someone had an encounter with God, if I had an encounter with God, and he said he was going to heal me, and the next day I died, I probably hallucinated. Okay, but the outcome is that something happened, something that couldn't be explained, something that had that medical establishment up in arms. And prior to that, and like I said, those things do happen. But prior to that, I had I had an encounter. Well, I wouldn't even say genuine because you don't know. But prior to that, I had an encounter with God. He spoke to me. It wasn't a verbal.
It's your personal experience, and your personal experience is never going to convince, or it shouldn't convince anybody else because they didn't experience it. It's
no.
Your story doesn't surprise me at all. I would expect that a very small amount of people would survive that type of thing, and I also accept that a small amount of people, when they've had some sort of trauma, a lot of people go through sort of like hallucinations and vivid dreams and stuff like that. The body's trying to recover, the brain is trying to make sense of it. We understand that people go through these things.
When you separate, I understand. Paul, when you separate those two things, that people have hallucinations in that thing, and people can get better. But when you piece them together like that, that's what makes it different for me, because one led to the other. It was not two separate events.
It's a personal experience to you, and it's never going to be convincing to somebody else. So we accept that people have hallucinations. We accept that people sometimes beat the odds. So somebody has an hallucination and beats the odds. That has to be God. No, that's just not convincing.
It doesn't. People can.
You've had two things that we both accept that can happen without God, which is beating the odds. We all accept that people can beat the odds, and we all accept that people, when they're going through recovery, especially if it's a brain injury, people are going through a recovery, that it can play tricks with the brain and how they remember things and whatever. So none of this is surprising to me at all. None of it.
No, I don't. It's you're right. It's not surprising. Some people can have hallucinations with a brain injury. Some people can miraculously get well. But what I'm saying, Paul, is that for me, where it's different is that I had that encounter, and people could think, oh, well, that was hallucination. But then straight after that encounter, the outcome of that was I walked out of that hospital.
And what I'm saying to you is that your personal experience is never going to be convincing to somebody. It's only ever going to convince you.
No, I agree. But I'm just trying to make you aware that if you separate those two events, separate, yes, you're right. It could be other causes. But when you piece them together, that I had that encounter, and then the day after I had what happened to me.
If both, we can accept both can happen separately. Now, like I've just said, there's people going through horrific injuries on a daily basis. So some of them will just have hallucinations and that's it. They'll die. Some people will just get better and they didn't have anything at all. They just happened to get better. They go beat the odds. They didn't get any, nothing spoke to them or anything like that. They just got better. So you can have a point where somebody happens to experience both. That doesn't mean it was a god. That just happens to mean that a very small percentage of these people that are going to get better anyway, and the very small percentage of these people that have these hallucinations, the fact that one person has both does not mean that it was a god. Doesn't mean that. It just means that you just happen to have an hallucination. You had a brain injury, so you had an hallucination, and you so happen to beat the odds. That still doesn't. So putting the two together still doesn't make no difference to me.
Yeah, well, so for me, it does make a difference because of the time, because of the time factor that it happened in, and because most of the time when people beat the odds, it's a process of healing. It's a process of recovery.
Again, like I'm saying, I wasn't there. I don't know what you went through.
You weren't there.
What I'm saying is your story is never going to be convincing to somebody like me. It never will be, because I can't live it. It wasn't like I even knew you at the time and I saw you going through it. I don't have any experience of this. So your story is never going to convince somebody like me. It never is.
But it's not unconvincing you either. That's the thing. And if it's not, you're not unconvinced that it's not a possibility that God could have intervened. You're not unconvinced either.
No, it's not. I'm not saying that that it wasn't a god. It quite possibly could have been. Again, it's one of them things I can't say either way. But I've just said logically thinking is what is the most likely to have happened? A god intervened and saved you, or is it more likely that you just so happened to beat the odds, which many people do, without having any hallucination or personal experience? Some people also have personal experiences when they're going through that sort of trauma and still die at the end of it. So we just put that down to the fact that they were hallucinating and whatever. You just happen to have the hallucination and you got better. So to you, your personal experience is you're going to attribute it to a god. To anybody else listening to the story, I don't find it amazing at all. And it's never going to be, I don't know why we can just keep going on about this story all day long, but it's never going to be convincing to me. I didn't experience it, you did. It's your personal experience.
No. You asked me to tell you, you asked me, so I told you. I'm not giving you this story to convince you of anything. But you can look at things logically, but when a miracle happens, it steps outside of logic. It goes against logic. It goes against the laws of nature, natural laws.
No, it didn't go against the natural law of nature. We've already established.
How do you know natural laws? How do you know it didn't?
Because we know that people can have horrendous injuries, and the medical professional go, we don't give much hope for this. It's probably going to turn out bad. And it doesn't. You beat the odds. We've already said that. That's all that happened to you. It didn't go against the natural law. What happened to you?
How can you say that? You can't make that claim with any proof. Yes, it could. Yes, it could. Hold on, Paul. You can't make that claim. You don't have proof to make that claim. All you can say is it's probably, perhaps, maybe you just got better.
What I'm saying is,
perhaps maybe I got better. Perhaps maybe I did get better through a supernatural event. Is it possible that I may have got better through a supernatural event? Is it possible?
I've got no experience of anything supernatural, so I would have to go, no, people do sometimes beat the odds, not very often, but sometimes people do beat the odds. It's a natural occurrence that sometimes people can be really badly injured and they can beat the odds. That's not supernatural. It can happen.
It can happen.
So it's not necessarily supernatural. Now you need to prove the supernatural, because I don't know anything supernatural.
Okay, you said it's not necessarily a supernatural. So you're saying it's not necessarily opens to the fact that there could be something supernatural that happened. Now,
But
when you
now,
when
now you've got to prove that supernatural is something that happened, because I've got no experience of the supernatural. Your claim is supernatural. My claim is this happens naturally anyway, and you've agreed that it does. It could happen naturally, that people can just naturally beat the odds, where we would say, we didn't think you're really going to survive that one. It was in a really bad way. Most people, not all, but most people that suffer these types of injuries die. Not everybody, but the chances are he isn't going to survive this. Most people don't. And when they don't die and they do survive it, it's not supernatural. They beat the odds. So how are you going to determine? So how can you determine which one is supernatural and which one is just beating the odds? Now you need to prove that.
So here is the thing: you can't determine which is supernatural and which is just breaking the odds. But hold on.
No, we don't know, because you're talking as if supernatural is a thing.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, supernatural. Well, you can't say that supernatural's not. You can't say that supernatural's not a thing. You can't say that. Just because you haven't seen, but just because you haven't seen a miracle does not mean that you can turn around and go, well, it's not a thing. But just the fact of the matter is you haven't seen it yet. So but when when you hear of millions of people throughout history and even that testify to having some sort of miracle happen to them, to go through every single one of them and disprove and say that every single one of them is nothing more than there was never a miracle at all. There's a very, very high ask.
The most supernatural things or miracle claims are as weak as yours, and yours is very weak.
Some of them are weak. I'm not stating anything. I'm not using my situation to as an argument for the proof of the supernatural. I was never ever trying to do that. But what I'm saying is that when you have millions of people that claim something supernatural happened, you have to disprove and dispute every single one of those events as being nothing, as being not supernatural at all. You can't do that.
No, I don't need to prove it's not supernatural.
I'm appealing here to a mass consensus. When you've got millions of people that have had something happen that they claim is supernatural, how can you disprove every single one of them? You can't.
Don't they need to prove that it is? I don't need to prove it isn't.
No, but the fact that you've got millions of people that claim something should give you reason to think about it.
No, because when I hear the individual stories that I hear of the supernatural, when it actually boils down to the story that they're going to tell me, it's as weak as yours, and I class yours as a very weak argument.
That's just what you're saying. I'm not using mine as an argument. That's the thing. I'm not using mine as an argument. I'm simply telling you what happened to me. And from my point of view, from me being there, the fact that no one else was there but me, from my point of view, it is a very, very good argument for me personally, because I was there.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It's a personal thing. It's never going to be convincing to anybody else. The same as the other ones that are or other stories of miracles. Whenever I hear of a story of a miracle, when I look at it, I go, that doesn't sound like a miracle to me. The same as yours doesn't sound.
It happens. You know, you've got people who.
Yeah,
who you have people that claim to have a miracle happen. That's nothing more than the known events, some events of nature that haven't processes that haven't been known yet. And people say, "Oh, it must be a miracle." Well, in actual fact, it just could be the fact that science is catching up to something happening that they at the moment don't know anything about. That is a possibility, right? But you would have to attribute that to every single miracle claim that's ever been made, and I don't, and you just can't do that. Every single one of them, 100% of them, must be a non-miracle. for you to make the claim that miracles and the supernatural does not exist. And nobody can do that.
They've got to convince me that the supernatural miracle happens. I don't have to disprove every claim. I just have to listen to the claim and go, do I find that claim that a miracle? Do I find what they're telling me convincing? And I don't find it convincing. Not one miracle miracle claim have I ever heard that I go, that one sort of got me stumped. No, it doesn't. None of them are, to me.
Well, obviously,
some of them are so far-fetched that I don't believe them anyway.
Yeah.
We never get something that can be verified, a miracle that can be verified, which stumps, absolutely stumps. So like somebody, gets the legs chopped off or blown off, and then, a month later, the legs have grown back. Now that would, you've got me going. If something like that happened, but we don't.
That's a miracle. That would be a miracle. Yeah.
Oh, that would be a miracle. Yes, I would. You would have made attention on that one, but that doesn't happen.
Yeah, well, it doesn't happen according to you because you haven't seen it.
I don't even know a claim of that where I've never even seen a claim of that happening.
Yeah. So we just got to. I mean, like I said, sometimes we could just be barking up the wrong tree anyway, and especially in the claims to a God or not God world. But as far as miracles go, I mean, I for one would think that a lot of these claims of miracles are nothing more than either lies or like I said, laws of nature that haven't been known as of yet. But I can't discount the fact that perhaps, maybe, just maybe, God does intervene in men's lives and miracles do occur. Like Jesus being risen from the dead, you would see that as a miracle. But you would probably turn around with many atheists and find reasons that perhaps he didn't die after all, So people will always find a reason to support their bias. And I think that's what you're doing, Paul.
Yes, because until the supernatural can be proven, until till I agree that there's some supernatural things happen, but I've got no. It's just a made up thing. Supernatural is just a made up thing. I don't see anything supernatural or miracle actually happening. Miracles are basically just very rare, events. Something that is extremely unlikely to happen, not something that is impossible to happen. Something which is very unlikely to happen.
If something's extremely and very unlikely to happen, then that's not a miracle. That just means it was extremely unlikely to happen, but it happened. That's not a miracle.
That's exactly what happened to you.
No. Well, you don't. You can't say that. You can't say that because you were not there. You're just surmising. You're just hypothesizing that you think this is what happened, but you don't know for a fact.
No, you said that if something was very, very unlikely to happen and did, that wouldn't be a miracle because it's only unlikely. It's not impossible for it to happen. Now, what happened to you wasn't impossible. It was just extremely unlikely.
What happened to me was unlikely. What was unlikely, but I understand it could have been unlikely for me to very unlikely. But the fact is, I had an encounter. I had an experience which shows me that God intervened in my life at that moment in time. I had something that happened, right? So it's there are things that are extremely unlikely as well, but I'm not seeing that as something that's extremely unlikely.
But you just said a minute ago that if something was extremely unlikely but it happened, you wouldn't accept that as a miracle because it's only unlikely. It's not impossible.
I'm not saying I wouldn't accept that as a miracle. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there are things happen that are extremely unlikely that are not miracles. That's what I'm saying. But I'm not saying that, I'm not saying, it's not a miracle. Something could be a miracle. So I believe there's miracles, that do happen. I believe that God genuinely does
How do you identify which ones are the miracles?
intervene with the affair. Hold on. I believe that God does genuinely intervene with the affairs of men, that miracles can happen at times. Do they happen a lot? I don't think so. But so I do genuinely believe that. I genuinely believe that things that are highly unlikely might happen just through a natural turn of events that we don't know about.
So how do we find out which ones are just extremely unlikely and which ones are actually the miracles? Now, we all accept that things that are unlikely to happen do happen. So how do we separate the ones which are just extremely unlikely to the ones that are actual miracles? How do we get to determine which one is which?
Well, that's the thing, Paul. That's the thing, Paul. We can't. We don't. Because that miracle is for that individual person.
If we cannot determine which is the difference between unlikely and a miracle, you've just admitted yourself that we cannot determine which one is unlikely. We can't.
You can't. As an onlooker,
why should we accept? So why should we accept the ones that people are claiming are miracles when we know that unlikely events do happen and we cannot determine which is unlikely and which is a miracle? Why don't we just say, well, until proven otherwise, it's just an unlikely event that happened?
No, because here is the thing. The miracle was not for you. The miracle was for them. That's the difference. It was never for you, but it was always for them.
So we'll never be able to find out which are miracles and which ones are just unlikely events.
Unless it is for you. No, you wouldn't. See, that's the thing, like the resurrection of Christ.
Which is what I said at the beginning.
Was for me.
I said at the beginning when you started telling me this story, that this sort of story is never going to be convincing to somebody else. It's only when it's a personal experience. It's never going to be convincing to anyone.
It would be convincing for someone who hears. It would be convincing for someone who's had a similar miracle. It would be convincing for someone who's had a similar experience. They can relate.
Do you think that somebody could go through the same experience, survive an unlikely event, and put it down to a miracle, and they're wrong? It was just an unlikely event. Do you think that's possible?
That is possible. Yeah, I do think that is possible. I mean, anything's possible. A misunderstanding is possible. A misdiagnosis is possible.
So isn't it more likely that they're all just unlikely events that happen and people are just calling them miracles?
Not for me. Not for me. For my situation, not for me. Because one thing led to another that led to another. So there was a series of events that happened after I had that encounter that confirmed to me. Hold on. That confirmed to me personally that God was doing something in my life. And like I said before, that miracle, that was for me. It wasn't for anyone else. It's not for me to convince anyone else of it. But the fact is, that was for me.
But people could have similar experiences and be wrong. It wasn't a miracle. It was just an unlikely event.
Yes, of course they could. Of course they could.
So how do we know the difference between the two? We don't.
Like I said before, no, you don't, because that miracle was never for you. It was for them. That miracle that happened to me was not for you. It was for me.
Some of these people that are claiming to have these miracles like you are, some of them are actually mistaken. They're just unlikely events.
Yes, some of them are mistaken. Yes, some of them are. Some of them are mistaken, but some of them aren't. See, some of them are mistaken, but some of them aren't mistaken.
How does anybody determine which is just an unlikely event and which is a miracle?
So the only way that you can really determine it, that's between you and God. It's between you and what happened to you. It's for you to come to that place of reasoning and understanding of, was this just an unlikely event where I got better? Was this a misdiagnosis, or did I have a genuine encounter? All these near-death experiences that people have, and people that have researched near-death experiences, some of them are fake. Some of them are purely the brain doing silly things during that moment, chemical releases. But then you've got people that have had very, very similar experiences, very, very similar things happened that have had the same thing. And when you look at the similarities, you can't discount that as just being brain orientated.
So we've got a natural. So you agree that we've got a natural explanation, which some of them will be just a natural explanation, and then we've got some that are miracles. So some we're going to call them miracles, and some you totally agree are natural events where where the hallucinations and the brain, people that have got brain damage, they can go through this type of experience and get better. So we both agree that this happens. This is what I'm trying to say is, how do we determine which ones are the natural events? Because to me, something to be a miracle, it has to suspend the laws of nature. It has to. It has to do. It's a miracle.
It has to break the laws of. It has to break the laws of nature. Yes, for it to be a miracle.
It has. Yeah, it has to. Bridge the thing. But we've just agreed that what you went through, some people go through naturally.
Yes.
So it's not. So what happened to you wasn't a miracle. To you, you're just calling it a miracle.
Well, you don't know that. You can't say that because you weren't there.
We have
it could have been a miracle.
Yes, we have a natural explanation to what happened to you. It could have been a miracle, but we also have a natural experience that we know happens. So
yeah, exactly. So it could have been.
So until the supernatural side can be proven, it is more logical to go they're just natural occurrences. Although they're very rare, they are still natural occurrences. We both agree that these natural occurrences happen, even though they're very rare. But what you're saying, in some cases, these natural occurrences can also be miracles, but we cannot determine which ones are which.
Well, you can't. You can't. Other people can't. But a person that's involved in that situation most definitely can at times. Sometimes, like I said, it's other things.
So sometimes they can, sometimes they can't. So sometimes people point out a miracle and they're wrong, and sometimes people put it down as a miracle and they're right.
Yeah. Some people might turn around and go, it was never a miracle at all when it actually was.
But there's no difference between the two.
It's very they're very different. They're very different. One is a natural, unlikely event happening.
So if they are very different. So if they are very different, which is the word that you've just used, they are very different, right? We should be able to look at each one and go, no, this one's a miracle, this one's natural. But we've just agreed that we cannot tell the difference between what is natural and what is a miracle. But then on the next breath, we go in, they are very different. What's different?
I'm saying that you can't. I'm saying that when a person has a miracle in their life, they know when it was a miracle.
No, because you also admitted that some of them are mistaken. So they come to the same conclusion as you. You've also agreed that some of them, not all of them, but some of them are probably mistaken.
Yeah, some of them, most of them are mistaken, I believe.
So how do you determine?
The only way I can determine that what happened to me was an encounter with God is because I was there and nobody else was. That's the only way. You were not there.
But you also could be wrong.
Anybody could be. Of course, anybody could be wrong. Yeah, but but the difference with me is I'll stake my life on it. That's the difference. I will stake my life on it.
We've got a natural explanation and we've got something that is a supernatural explanation.
Yeah, we've got natural and supernatural.
And we don't even know the supernatural exists. We know nature exists, but we don't know supernatural exists. We also know that people can have these experiences and be wrong. They can have the same experiences as you, but they might have got it wrong. You've also said that yourself. In fact, you said most of them probably have got it wrong.
Isn't it interesting? Well, yeah, people do get things wrong. That's the human condition. They do. But when we look at supernatural, something has occurred outside the realm of normal natural laws.
So we should be able. So we should, if that's the
it's-
case, if something has occurred outside of the natural law, then it shouldn't also be taking place in nature as well. So, like I say, if somebody having a serious injury, head injuries, and all that lot, we do know that they can, on some very small occasions, survive them, and it's perfectly natural to just happen to survive it. But what you're saying is, sometimes it's also supernatural as well. It's a miracle. But we can't tell the difference between the two. We can't tell the difference between the two.
No, because
So
because it's for the individual.
If a perfectly natural explanation is accepted and we all agree, why would on some occasions why would we go to the supernatural as an explanation? When nature already.
The reason why we go to supernatural is simply because we don't agree. Like if you'd agreed that it's not supernatural and I agree it is, well then we've just come to a disagreement. We haven't agreed on that thing, right?
But we don't know the supernatural exists. We only know that nature exists, and the experience that you're talking about. We also agree happens in nature as well.
Nature only exists. The only part of nature that exists is the nature that you observe and that you see. That's the only nature that exists, right? Everything else is purely theoretical, right? Unless you can observe it as being, and it's repeatable. You know what I mean? Something's observable and repeatable as being so, then you can confirm that that's natural. It's a natural process.
Which is the same in the instance we're talking about. We also can observe, we can test, we can look at the people that have severe injuries and the very small amount that survive through natural processes. We can study that, and we do study that. But for some reason, you're saying that some of them are supernatural, but you can't determine which ones are which.
Okay, so there's a natural side of things. You would agree? There's a natural side to things that we see. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you two believe that, then surely you have to agree that there's a side to things that we do not know, that we cannot see.
Yeah, but I wouldn't call it supernatural.
Things that we cannot see.
Yeah, but that wouldn't be supernatural though, just because we maybe don't have an understanding of something. I mean, obviously, years ago we didn't have an understanding of the the world that we live in like we do nowadays. So certain things that we experience and see now and have an understanding of, you go back 1,000 years, to them it would be supernatural. I mean, go back 1,000 years and start using a mobile phone, or just have this, and could take it back 1,000 years, to them that'd be supernatural. Using got one in here, using a two-way radio. Go back in time, and you've got two radios. Go back just 200 years and start using these and communicating with people. To them, that would be supernatural. It's not. They would be wrong, but their experiences, it would be supernatural.
Because they're not known. Because it's something. Yes, because it's something that's not known. Because it's something that's not known.
It's something. Yeah, but it's still something that is part of the natural world. And it's just something that we can use nowadays. So it won't be supernatural. So I've got no experience of this supernatural that you're telling me about, this miracle. A miracle. I'm using the word supernatural. Miracles then. That's it.
So,
using them radios 500 years ago, and if you could go back in time 500 years and give one of them the radio, to them that would be a miracle, that I could be several miles away and I'm talking to them. To them, that'd be like a miracle. It'd be supernatural.
It's not a miracle. It's just something that's not known yet.
Yeah, and the miracle.
So you're basically saying it's not a miracle. There's no such thing as miracle. It is simply things and processes that are not known yet. That's what you're saying, and you're using your radios as an example.
Yeah, no, not necessarily, because we have both agreed that the experience that you had also happen naturally, and actually does happen naturally. We understand that people can become extremely injured and beat the
Mm.
odds. Only a very small, 99% of people die of certain injuries, but you always get the odd one or two that happens to survive it. They're the lucky ones that survive it. That doesn't make that a miracle, and that's all that happened to you. That's all I'm saying. And you're just saying, yes, but I also had this personal experience of this God as well, which again, we both agree that some people do have hallucinations. When a lot of people that come out of just anesthetic can end up having hallucinations, but it's not a God. It's just that, the brain has been starved with oxygen, they've
Okay.
had anesthetic, and, there's lots of things that can affect the brain, which is just what's happened to you. But you're putting it
Okay.
down to supernatural when there is a natural explanation for it.
Okay. So if you had a personal encounter with God, a personal experience, right? Would you believe? Would you believe?
It depends what that experience was, wouldn't it? Now,
Well, no, I'm talking about. So I'm talking about a genuine
right,
experience with
right.
God. Would you believe? Would you believe?
It would depend under what circumstances it happened and what that
I think that
experience was. Now,
I think no
if
matter what personal encounter you had with God, that you could always come to a place of finding a reason why not to believe, why to attribute it to something else.
yes, because it would depend, like I say, on what if I have some sort of an experience and I've been put under general anaesthetic,
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a genuine. Even if you had a genuine experience with God, even if God come and stood right before you, you would probably find another reason to disprove it.
no, if I was sat
You
here now,
probably would.
no, I probably wouldn't, because if I was sat here now and I had this experience, then I would have a more difficult time of saying that I was probably hallucinating, because nothing had happened. There was nothing affecting me. I haven't taken any drugs. I wasn't suffering from an illness. You know, it would depend on the circumstances and what that experience actually was. Now, if I'd have been injured like you, and also had a brain injury like you said that you had, now what happens in that time when I'm suffering from a brain injury? Anything that I experience in that could be possibly down to the fact that I had a brain injury. I may have been given drugs to kill the pain, or I might have had an operation. I don't know what the circumstances would be. So, no, I probably wouldn't take that one quite as serious as if I'm just sat here and then suddenly I have
You
this.
can't. You know what? You can't say that because you weren't there. Now you don't know what drugs I was taking, which they
Never
weren't
know.
giving me any drugs. For the fact of the matter is, they weren't giving me any drugs because there's no drugs they could give me. Right? There's nothing they could give me. What I needed was rest. But you just turned around and you just said before that, you know, if God came to you the way that you describe, you would believe. You would probably believe. Yet when God comes to you would not.
Yeah, because it's your personal experience. That's what I was saying earlier on.
Yeah. But how come you are able to believe your experience, but you would not believe mine?
No, what I said was it would all have to depend on what the circumstances was to whether I've not had the experience, so I cannot give you a proper answer. I'm just saying that it would have to depend on the circumstances at the time, how the experience happened, what the experience was. So I cannot say whether I would believe it or I wouldn't believe it. There's too many factors involved that I couldn't really say. What I'm saying is that yes, if it was to happen here now while I'm sat in here, it would be different.
Yeah.
I'd have a different way of thinking about it than if, like I say, I'd had an injury, I was suffering from a brain injury, if I was coming out of an operation or whatever the circumstances were, that would be different than me just sat here and just suddenly having the
Yeah,
experience. That experience
it
would
would.
be. I don't know.
Yes, it would be. It would be different. It would be very different. And this is
Mm.
so. There's no difference. Like I didn't come out of an opera. I've looked at all these. I didn't
I
come out
wasn't
of an
saying you did.
operation. I
No, I
wasn't
wasn't.
on any drugs.
I wasn't saying
It's
you. I wasn't saying you did. I was. You were saying if I had the experience, and I was saying it would depend on what the circumstances were for that experience, and I use that as an example. If I'd had a
yeah.
brain injury, I'm not saying about you. If I'd had a brain injury, right, I would look at that different to me just sat here. If I'd have come out of an operation and I'd had an anaesthetic and been given drugs for
But
painkilling,
yeah, well, they didn't. But these things didn't happen to me. I understand all these factors that
no,
could or
no,
couldn't have
I'm not,
happened.
no, I'm not. I'm not using you as an example. You said if
Yes.
I had the no, if you said if I had the
If
experience,
yeah.
would I
Yeah.
believe
We are
it?
talking about you. Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about me, not you. All
You
these
slimy
I'm,
British
I'm,
bastard.
no, shut up, new me. I'm not using. I'm not these examples I'm giving. I'm not trying to say that these were your examples. You said if I had the experience, right, would I believe it? I would. My answer is it would depend on what circumstances was happening at the time. If I had a brain injury, nothing to do with you. If I had a brain injury, right, and I had this experience, I would have to look at it different than if I was to have the experience just sat in here. If I'd had an operation, I'm not saying you had an operation. I'm saying if I had an operation and I
Yeah.
was coming out as anaesthetic and I had this experience, then I would have to look at that differently. It would all depend on the circumstances of me having this experience. That's all I was saying. I wasn't saying anything about you.
I agree. I agree, and I'm just using me as an example. But I
But every time I use that,
these
every time I tried to explain this, you were saying, yeah, but that didn't happen to me. But I wasn't saying it did.
No. The only reason when you're explaining it, the only reason why I'm stating what happened to me is because I'm relating to it. I'm relating to someone that had an encounter with God. It's basically me being relational to what you're saying. Okay, that's all that is. But what I'm saying, Paul, is you made it quite clear that if you had an encounter with God and He was to come there and reveal Himself before you, you would go through all the different avenues and excuses to try and discredit that what you actually saw was real.
No, what I said was it would all depend
you have
on
a bias.
No, it would all depend on the circumstances, and until that happens, I can't really give a truthful answer.
It all depends on how strong you. No. It all depends on how strong your bias is.
That's what it depends on. I figured it out.
What did you figure out?
First name and Kamish is your last name legally?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, I figured it out. I'm gonna sue you. I'm not going to offer you money. I'm going to threaten to sue you if you don't convert right now.
Right now. What am I getting sued for? What have I done?
You're going to have a lawsuit against you.
I reckon you should pray. I reckon you should pray for Paul Numi, one of your imprecatory prayers.
No, don't do that, because all that'll do is prove that prayer doesn't work.
Oh.
So on the course docket, it's going to say Paul Kamish versus Numismatic Gang.
I can prove that prayer does work, Paul. Let me pray for you. I'll prove that prayer does work.
No,
maybe not right now here, maybe not necessarily not here and then, but there's no harm in me praying that God would reveal Himself to you. Is there?
We already tried to pray for him. He's too slimy. We got to sue him.
Is there any harm in that, Paul?
No, there's no harm in it. No, it doesn't bother me. I don't care less.
I tried to twist his arm. I tried to pig roast him. I tried to do everything. Now it's time to sue me.
And you're listening to the newsunit.com on the YouTube video network for station identification.
Anyway, I'm going to have to go to bed. It's 4:10 in the morning here.
Yeah, well, good talking to you, Paul.
As soon as you heard that, you're going to get sued.
Are you going to go QRT, are you?
I am going QRT, yes. In fact,
so I'm going to pray for you. I'm going
to get sued.
As soon as you get off the off here, I'm going to pray for you. As soon as you get off, okay?
Right now.
Yeah, that's fine.
What? We're all here gathered together.
You're going to do it on the stream, are you, when I'm gone?
Yeah, I'll do it when you're gone. What do you reckon?
Yeah, fill your boots, fella. Don't mind.
Typical slimy British guy. He
Oh,
flees when he hears
for
he's
the
going to
visit,
get
man.
sued.
You me.
No,
I
he's
want
got
to
to go.
Yeah, he needs-
Yeah,
he needs to
don't worry. I'll slap Numi I'll slap Numi even harder, Paul.
It's all right. I like Numi, actually. I've had a few conversations with Numi. I actually like him. I think he
You know,
likes
the good
me.
thing with Numi, the good thing with
You're gonna
Numi,
go to heaven soon, man. I know you will.
I'll tell you
You'll
one thing.
convert.
Hey, Paul, I'll tell you one thing about Numi just before you go. The good thing
Go on.
about him is he reveals people's character and how they deal with him and how they respond. It shows their character more than it shows his. Have you noticed?
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, I mean, I like Numi. He's a good bloke. I like having conversations with him.
I
Yeah, he's
promise
cool.
you we're going to go see heaven together. It's just going to take a little bit of time with you, I can tell.
Yeah, but you see, the thing is, Numi, this is why your heaven and hell can't exist, because I think you like me that much that I think if you were to go to heaven and you were to actually be aware that I was in hell, you'd be like, I'm a bit sad, really, that Paul's down there and I'm up here. I don't think heaven would be quite as much fun as you think it is.
Have you ever pissed off your wife, Paul?
Well, I'll tell
Yeah.
you what.
Yeah,
I'll
so
t- I'll tell you what.
know it's real then. You know hell is real if you pissed off your wife.
I'll tell you what, Paul. I'll tell you what, Paul.
Yeah.
If I end up going to the pearly gates and I see half of these people there that call themselves Christians, I'm running the other way.
It's 11
I'm
minutes
like,
after
I
the
ain't
hour.
going in there.
Habevo Radio Network. You're listening to the news unit for station identification.
And that just proves the point what I said earlier on, Jace, when I was saying that there's only 2 billion Christians on the planet and half of them aren't going anywhere. There's a lot of them you don't think was going. There's be a few that don't think you're going because you probably don't believe quite the version that they want you to believe in. And yeah,
It's true. Yeah, that's true.
it's
But
true.
you know,
yeah.
everything I said to you tonight, it's literally out of love. You know that. I don't want you to go to hell.
I know you don't, Numi.
I know you don't believe in it, but like seriously, man, I want to be there with you.
Yeah, we'll have a couple of beers. Can we
And
still have
He's appealing to your. All he's doing now is he's appealing to your the emotional side of you, Paul.
I know.
Oh, we got Jace the psychologist up there.
Yeah. Right. Anyway, it's been an absolute pleasure, and no doubt I'll be on here another night. So
Sure, yo, man.
All right, Paul.
yeah,
Good talking to you. See you later, Paul.
It's been a good
You are
conversation.
listening to the news unit.
Yeah. God bless.
Broadcasting Network.
God bless, Paul.
Cheers, fella. Catch you all later.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Ta-da. And I'm back. Oh, it was an hour. Oh, that was quite good. So yeah, we all left at Friends in the end. So that turned out all right. I do quite enjoy having these conversations with people like that don't lose the shit. Saying that sometimes when they lose the shit, that can also be good fun as well, can't it? I must admit. But yeah, that all ended quite well. But I don't think I got through to him. But without rehashing it, I just don't know how you can accept these things. He accepts that all these things happen naturally, but then accepts that some of them are miracles. I just don't know how he determines which ones are miracles and which ones are natural. Doesn't make no sense. Anyway, I'll end the stream here. I'll stick my what is it back on again? Add it to the stream, and then hopefully I'll catch you all on the next one. So thanks for coming. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Help the channel get a little bit bigger because I'm going to start putting some more of these sort of things on, because I do a lot of this type of stuff. I tend to go in other people's streams. I did do the stream the other day with Secular Rarity on Skeptic Haven. I believe that goes out this coming Saturday. Anyway, when it comes out, I'll put it onto my stream, so that'll be another one to go on to. And I think I might have a couple more to go on to as well. So hopefully there should be some more content. Anyway, with that, I'll catch you all later, and I'll see you on the next one.